guys, welcome to Chapter 5, Description. This is what we were going to start in class Wednesday, and first and foremost, I just want to apologize to you for all the missed class. Um, I applied to go to this conference forever ago, and wasn't sure if I was going to get funding, and never really heard back about it, and I found out Friday that I did get funding to go, so... I am going to the conference, and I hate that we're missing more class, and I seriously apologize. But hopefully these videos will kind of make it feel almost like we're in class, because I'm just going to go over the PowerPoint with you, basically step by step, what we would have gone over. I'm also posting the PowerPoint so that you can kind of go over it at your own pace, but you can also kind of hear me talk through it quickly. Okay, so if you want to follow along in your book, we're in Chapter 5, Description. Your first paper is a descriptive narrative paper. Also, definitely going to be amending the schedule quite a bit because your rough draft is supposed to be due next week, I think, and obviously that's not going to happen because we are just so behind. So I'm going to seriously overhaul the schedule, and I'm going to get that out to you as soon as I get back. So don't worry about that. Don't panic. We're just starting on this description and narration. So we're going to start with description. Friday's PowerPoint that's going to be up is going to be all about narration, and hopefully when we get back together, we'll just do kind of a review of it, kind of go over anything you guys didn't understand, anything you think I need to go over more. So hopefully this will get us at a pretty good place. Okay. Today we're going to go over what is description, how do we use description, how do we translate description into our papers, and understanding the types of description. So if you're following along in your book, page 46 talks about description. Description is a major part of our daily thoughts and language. We use description daily. We see it used daily. We see it in Facebook posts. We all talked about our friends who are overly descriptive on Facebook. We all have those. Job reports. Obviously, we want job reports to be descriptive because we need job reports to tell us exactly where the job's located, what's involved with the job, how much is going to be paid, what's expected, things like that. Obviously, in our academic papers, news reports, etc., these are all mediums that we naturally expect to be descriptive. And when they're not descriptive, we don't appreciate it. So, main rule with description. When I say be descriptive, what I mean is you need to draw on the 5 senses, okay? So taking it back to kindergarten, we're going to think about what things look like, what things taste like, smell like, sound like, feel like, okay? So bringing in the 5 senses really brings certain situations to life in a way that nothing else can. So your book gives all these examples: the faint scent of rain on a summer night, the sour taste of a lemon, beauty of the sun descending into the ocean. So it's giving these extra details so that we're doing the job of showing our reader rather than telling our reader, okay? And here's an example of how effective it is. So, for example, the basketball game was filled with breathtaking, exciting moments. Versus, the basketball game was won in the last 2 seconds by Monica Lopez, our rangy point guard who hit a jumper from the top of the key over the outstretched arms of the player, frantically trying to stop her. So you can see that those sentences basically mean the same thing. Both are describing a basketball game. If I tell you I went to a basketball game and it was really fun, you can pretty much imagine, what I saw and what was there and etc. But that second sentence does a little more, because if you tell me, oh, I went to a basketball game last night and it was filled with exciting, breathtaking moments. If you tell a group of people that, we're all going to be picturing something different, okay? I might be picturing a high school basketball game, and the guy next to me might be picturing an NBA game, and the guy next to me might be picturing, a real small scale game at the Y. Somebody else might be picturing a basketball game that's happening outdoors. What's going on, okay? Description shows your reader rather than tells your reader. So with this one's left a lot to my own interpretation. This one, I can't really misinterpret it. I know exactly who's involved. I know exactly what the exciting moment was. I know what happened. I can picture the player frantically trying to stop her. So I'm being shown rather than being told, and that happens through the 5 senses. Tell me what you saw, tell me what you heard, tell me what you tasted, smelled, everything you can, so that I feel like I'm involved. I feel like I was there. I can picture it so well. I'm picturing it exactly the way you intend for me to picture it. It's not left to my own interpretation. I'm picturing it the way you want me to picture it. Okay? So Types of description, this isn't really too crucial for this, but it is important for you to know about it. Objective versus subjective description. This bold sentence down here is the most important. Most writing is going to contain both, okay? So an objective description is, you can think of it as very scientific, not a lot of room for interpretation, very accurate, unbiased, etc. Subjective description is a focus on feelings. So the focus is not on raw, unobjective data. It's very sensory. It's very personal. And the best example your book gives this, talking about a golden retriever. Okay, so objective description, which we said is very scientific, will say something like a golden retriever is a water spaniel developed by Scottish hunters to retrieve birds that have been killed. Okay, now that's probably straight from the dictionary. Nobody can really argue with that. That's the standard definition of a golden retriever if I looked it up. Subjective description, though, let's say I had a golden retriever and I loved it and I just thought it was the best dog in the whole world. So I say to you, a golden retriever is a devoted, intelligent dog who is obedient and loves children. Okay? Now, this is obviously based on my own experience. Maybe you had a golden retriever that attacked you, and so you would have a very different subjective description. Okay? So, good writing, good descriptive writing is going to have both. You're usually going to have one that outweighs the other, and I'll go ahead and tell you for these papers, most people draw on personal experiences, so the subjective description usually outweighs the objective, but it's a good idea to try to strike a balance. Most writing is gonna want to have both, and whether your writing is going to be more subjective or objective depends on your goal. What's your goal? What are you trying to do? So most of the time, our goal in our writing in English 111 is just to inform or just tell a story or entertain. Um, if you had a different goal, okay, like if you were a doctor and you wanted to talk about a patient to your fellow doctor friends, you might have mostly objective description. If you're a doctor and you're talking to a patient's family, you might have subjective description, relate things in more of a personal way. So this goes back to, what is your purpose? Who is your intended audience? What do you want them to know? And for that reason, most of the writing in here takes more of a subjective slant. We don't get a lot of papers that are completely objective, just data upon data. It's kind of hard to write an interesting narrative like that. Okay, so mostly subjective is probably going to be your goal, but just know that the objective is encouraged if you can work it in when you can. Okay, now, when we talk about the five senses, we say, we call bringing in the five senses, we call it using sensory adjectives. Google. Because we know that sensory adjectives are just words that describe nouns. And sensory just means five senses. So these sensory adjectives. Now, the first step, and we're on page 48 if you're still in your book, the first step in writing a descriptive essay is to figure out the dominant impression, essentially the thing you're going to describe. Now, it seems like you might be thinking, okay, I should probably already know the thing I'm going to describe. That should be probably the first thing I do. And it is. But the dominant impression is a little more specific than the subject of your overall paper. Okay? The problem with descriptive papers is people, when they start thinking about the five senses and they start going into all that detail, it can get really easy to kind of go off on a tangent and get really off topic and describe something in great detail that you don't necessarily need to describe in great detail, okay? So let's say I want to describe to you dinner at my favorite restaurant. Let's go with this one. Now, dinner at my favorite restaurant is the dominant impression. So mostly in my paper, I'm going to focus on these things. Now, where people get off topic is they'll talk about dinner at their favorite restaurant and they'll give me some information like riding there. When I was riding there, I was in, my brother's car. And this is what the interior of his car looks like. And his car smells like leather and the air freshener that he has. And I was chewing gum and it tasted like mint. And, my brother is 6 feet tall and he has blonde hair. Okay? Now, people do that because when you're in descriptive mode, it's hard to get out of it. So you have to think, okay, wait, let me refocus. I don't want to go off on a tangent about my brother's car. My dominant impression, the most important thing that I'm describing is dinner at my favorite restaurant. So I want to be very specific. I want to focus on that because these papers are only 2 pages long, so you don't need to give me too much information, okay? So I'm going to think about the dinner at my favorite restaurant, and I'm going to go through the five senses and use as many as I can. Now, note that I said that, use as many as you can. Sometimes it's impossible to use all five. For example, if I'm describing, a chair, I'm not going to have much taste attributed to that, hopefully. Okay, so dinner at my favorite restaurant. I'm going to think about, okay, the sounds and the sights. I'm going to talk about how it's quiet. I'm going to talk about the music playing. I'm going to talk about the well-decorated dining room. I'm going to talk about the people I see. I'm going to talk about what I smell. I'm going to talk about what I'm touching, the tablecloth, the fork, my cold water glass. What am I touching? The taste. I'll describe the food. Dominant impression, evening at a college football game. So I'll talk about the smell, sound, taste, things that I see, things that I feel, giving as much as I can to show my reader rather than tell my reader. If I say, oh, I had dinner at my favorite restaurant last night to a group of people, we're all going to be picturing something different. I might picture you at a steakhouse. Another person might picture you at home with your parents. Another person might picture you eating sushi. I don't know what your favorite restaurant is. I don't know what you ate. So this is why you have to describe it to me. Okay? Enjoyable evening at a college football game. We all have a different picture in our minds when we hear that sentence. What exactly is an enjoyable evening? Is it cool outside? What kind of seats do you have? What do you see? Who's winning? Let me know. Tell me so that it's not left to my interpretation. I'm seeing it exactly the way you want me to see it through those five senses. Okay? So, and this is if you want to look on 49, we would do this in class, but page 49 has a picture of like a nightclub. Graphics dominant impression then would be the nightclub. Details in the visual. So you can look at that image and see, what do you think if you were in this image? What would you see, smell, hear, taste, feel? Think about it. And I want you to say, you know, I can say, "Oh, I was at a nightclub last night," or I was at a club, I was at a bar, and we can all be thinking very different things. I can be thinking, something very different than the rest of you are thinking. So, I have to describe it to you. Well, here's who I was with, and the club was really dark, and the DJ was playing this type of music, and I, met these people, and it sounded like this, and everything. You have to kind of paint me a picture, pretty much. So we want dominant impression. We want details that show rather than tell. We want details that engage the senses. Of course, we want organization and a conclusion. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to do this. Actually, I'm going to kind of amend it because we won't be in the classroom, but that'll be on our site, so don't worry about that. Okay, now, writing description, the other thing with description is you can also bring in figurative language like simile and metaphor. So, if you'll recall, simile is the one where we use like or as, and metaphor is the one where we don't. So, these are really great to bring in to your descriptive papers if you can. So, I can say, the club was like a dark cave because I could barely see anything in there. Or the club was like a loud concert because music was blasting and people were bumping into me. Metaphor, I could say, uh, you know, pretty much the same thing except like us. The club is a dark cave where I can't see anything in front of me. So these help too. So bring in the five senses, that's the most important. But if you want to get really creative and bring in simile and metaphor, that's extra good. That would be excellent. Okay. Now, revising and editing stage of the descriptive paper is also important because you have to go back through and make sure the description is exactly as you want it to be. Did I describe everything I could? People leave out things that you would not believe in description. They'll tell me, I looked across the table and, I was eating at my favorite restaurant and my boyfriend was sitting there and he said, Happy Valentine's Day. Okay? Now, this is great. And then they'll end the sentence there. So I'm thinking, I don't know what your boyfriend looks like. I don't know, is he, tall? Does he wear a hat? I mean, tell me. Because I'm just picturing like some random guy in my head. Tell me what he looks like. Tell me how far he is across the table. Tell me what the lighting's like. I want to picture it. Okay? So try not to leave anything up to the interpretation of your reader. Give them as much as they can so that they can see what you saw during your experience. That's the whole goal here. Okay, we know about revising and editing. Editing is where you look closely at your words, details, you know, punctuation, revising, etc. Don't worry about the homework because I'm going to put it on the site and I'll make you do it there. So, went through this quickly, so go back over the PowerPoint if you need to look at it, it more closely. But hopefully this gives you a pretty good idea of where we're going with description, and then we're going to review narration so that we can hopefully get started on these drafts if we don't miss any more school. So thank you guys. Review this many times as you need to, and I'll see you soon.